I finally decided to watch Oppenheimer. Was it worth the wait? If it was shorter, maybe. This was released in 2023. It's directed and written by Christopher Nolan, and we have a cast including Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr. We have an amazing cast. The performances are great. Visually, it is really stunning. There are some scenes that are really amazing, but I don't understand the hype. I don't think it deserves all of the love and praise that it gets, because I think the method of storytelling is quite choppy. It's a little bit messy. It's way longer than it needs to be. I think there needs to be a lot of work done on this film for it to be considered amazing. But it's obviously a 7 Oscar winning film, and it has 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb across 885,000 reviews and ratings. It has a Metascore of 90. I don't agree with any of that. I don't think it's amazing. I think it's maybe playing on people's emotions about these really serious events in history, and obviously that's absolutely fine. But judging it as a story, let's say it wasn't based on truth, and I'll talk about the narrative in a moment, of course. Let's say it was just a work of fiction, and we didn't have that emotional connection of our own histories, then I don't think it would have received quite as much praise, because the narrative itself is a little waffly, very slow in places. There's a lot of fluff that doesn't need to be there. This is, of course, about J. Robert Oppenheimer and how he helped create the atomic bomb and the tests that were involved. And obviously we look at very specific periods during the war, and there are some scenes, particularly towards the end, or certainly after the first half, where things get quite serious with the tests. Things start to come into fruition, and that's when it gets a little intense. Because even knowing what happens, because obviously it's based on truth, there's still this uncertainty for the characters in the film. They don't know how things are going to play out. They don't know if things will be significantly more disastrous than they predict. Now, if you're making an atomic bomb, things are going to be pretty disastrous anyway. But it could be even better because they had no idea how things were going to play out. And at a certain point, that intensity, that unpredictability, that uncertainty is really strong, and it works really well. But leading up to that, there is so much fluff. I feel like the narrative structure is not great, and in general, as a story, there are some amazing bits, and there's a lot of fluff. There's a lot in this that does not need to be there, and I don't think it's an amazing film. But the good bits are really amazing. The special effects are fantastic. The performances are brilliant. I have no idea how accurate the performances are when it comes to real figures, but I've not heard anything to suggest that, for example, this doesn't feel like Oppenheimer. So I'm going to assume that the characters are very closely written to their real counterparts, and the performances there are really good. So there are a lot of great things about this film. Visually stunning, great performances. The good bits of the narrative are very, very good, but the narrative structure isn't great. And there is so much fluff in this. I didn't mention, but it's 3 hours. It has no business being 3 hours. There is absolutely no need for it to be 3 hours. There is so much that we could have taken out of this, and we wouldn't have lost anything at all. And that means that there's a lot that doesn't need to be there. So I don't understand the hype. I don't understand the great praise that this film gets. But obviously take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt, as a lot of people really love it. But I think the main reason for that, aside from, as I said, great performances and special effects, is that the emotional scenes are really strong. The scenes where we're not sure, well, we know as viewers, but the characters don't know what exactly is going to happen next because they're obviously experimenting with things. That's very well done. And I think that it's very easy to feel the fear that they would have felt and the concerns that they would have felt at the time. And it is very easy to be transported to that time, and it becomes quite emotional, and that works very well. But I think it is playing on our emotions as humans who have learned from this time period, who have had relatives during this time period who would have remembered this. I was born in 1992. Obviously, I don't remember any of this firsthand, but it's collectively part of our histories, and in one way or another. And that part, I think, will really play on people's emotions. And I think maybe, and purely in my opinion, aside from the special effects and performances, my opinion is that's why it's got such a high rating. because the storytelling for a lot of it, not all of it, but for a lot of it, is not that great. The story itself, the overarching narrative, specific scenes here and there, amazing. But the actual approach to storytelling needs a lot of improvement. So I don't agree that it's an amazing film. I think Barbie is significantly better. I know that it's a bit of a weird comparison, but obviously we had Oppenheimer with the two films released at the same time, kind of going unofficially going head to head. And I think Barbie is a much better story, a much stronger narrative. Visually, I would say visually just as impressive in a lot of ways, certainly with the set designs and the color palette. And I actually think that Barbie is a superior film because there's not a lot about that film that needs to be improved upon. Whereas I think the storytelling here definitely has a lot of work needing to be done to be a great story. But the actual specifics of the narrative, the key plot points, they're all very well done. It's just everything in between that definitely needed some work. But as I said, 8.3 out of 10, 7 Oscar-winning film, apparently 361 wins in total, the 120th top-rated film of all time on IMDb at the time of recording. So take everything I'm saying with a pinch of salt. I don't think it's a perfect film, but there are some really great moments. And with a bit of work, cutting down the fluff, working a little bit more on the storytelling, it could have been spectacular. And ultimately, while I don't think I'll ever watch it again, I didn't mind watching it. And for the most part, I do recommend it.